I'm also a long-standing member of Amnesty International, and our group in Toronto had a file on a community, a farming community in Palestine, Jeus, and I was fortunate enough to be in an area of the West Bank that included the village of Jeus. And but here's the community in which we lived. This is a picture of 4 of these members in the picture are members of the team I was part of. There were 31 ecumenical accompaniers in Palestine when I was there from February to April of last year. And 5 of us were based in the community of Tulkarem in the northwest part of Palestine. And the 5 of us, obviously I was from Canada, there was 1 from Ireland, 1 from Switzerland, 1 from Australia, and 1 from Sweden on our little team. And I just wanted to show you a few pictures from Tulkarem to give you a sense of what this community was like. It's very much like a community in Ontario, perhaps, or BC, in Canada. This is a market that we discovered rather late in our stay there, but we shared that information with the new team when they replaced us. I'm sure many of you know the area, but just in case you don't, this is in the grayish area here, that's Israel. Sorry, that's the West Bank, that's Palestine. The other part of Palestine is Gaza, and in orange is Israel, and there's Syria, Jordan, and Egypt. Nablus, right there, was a community that we went to. Every Sunday we were encouraged to go to church in Nablus because there is a sizable Christian community there, and we supported by our presence the Christian churches in that community. Our own community of Tulkarem, where we lived, had only 4 Christians in it. The rest of the community of 70,000+ was Muslim. Again, here's a closer picture of the West Bank. There is Tulkarem, where we lived, but the area we served, and it was basically outside the big cities that we did our work, is roughly in this area here. Again, this is a map of the West Bank of Palestine. And it's divided under the Oslo Accords into 3 areas. But 60% of the West Bank under the Oslo Accords is under Israeli control, and that's the orange area. And the other 40% is under the Palestinian Authority's control in theory, but Israel gets to go wherever it wants. The Israeli military goes wherever it wants. And in one part of the lighter area, the Palestinian Authority has both both administrative and security control in theory, and in the other part, the Israeli military has the security control, and the Palestinian Authority has only administrative control. But as I say, Israel military gets to go where it wants. And the other thing I wanted to set out as part of the context is what's happening in the West Bank in terms of the illegal, under international law, illegal Israeli settlements. And these red dots are the illegal Israeli settlements. Israel has moved settlers, Israeli settlers, from Israel into the West Bank and built settlements for them. And as you can see, they are spread throughout the West Bank in East Jerusalem. And right now, the number increases every month, every year. Right now, there are 600,000 Israeli Jewish settlers living in the occupied West Bank and the occupied part of East Jerusalem. And that compares, that's basically 1/5 of the population now living in that area. So imagine if on Vancouver Island, if 1/5 of the people were people that had moved here from outside, were subject to different laws, different rules, and than the indigenous population, which is what now applies in the West Bank. The other thing that of significance is Israel had, for the group, our group of ecumenical accompaniers, is that Israel has built a separation barrier. And the International Court of Justice ruled that the separation barrier would be legal if it was built on the Green Line, the armistice line from 1948 between the West Bank and Israel, which is in effect recognized as the boundary between Israel and the West Bank. The International Court of Justice ruled that the separation barrier would be legal if it were built on that Green Line. The problem is that for 80% of its length, it deviates from the Green Line, and in areas deviates quite noticeably, quite markedly from the Green Line. And it was in the areas where it deviates that we did one part of our work, which was helping farmers get to their lands. Because Palestinian farmers have lands, farmlands, on the Israel side of the separation barrier, simply because the barrier wasn't built where it should have been built. So early in the morning we would get up, and the first day, every morning we would get up and go to an agricultural gate. There were 12 agricultural gates in the area that we were responsible for, our team was responsible for, and we would try to get to 2 every morning. Here you see an ecumenical accompanier with someone else who came to visit, watching what was happening at the agricultural gate. And here's a tractor of a farmer who had arrived early before the gate opened, and the donkey's there as well. And often what would happen is there were farmers who owned the land on the other side, and they employed a number of workers. And to get through the gate to the Israeli side of the wall, or fence, although it's still Palestinian land, they would need a permit issued by the Israeli authorities. And sometimes they would get their permits, sometimes they wouldn't. But in addition to the farmers who owned the land, they would have employees that would work with them on the land. And here at one gate, the Atil gate, you see that the workers have arrived before the gate opens and are gathered, and they have there's a temporary shelter there, a metal container, and someone has set up a coffee booth in there, and we would get free coffee there each morning at that gate. And the women would arrive, because they too would go through to the lands, but they would gather separately. And then here's one gate where they're going through, and they would come often in these trailers, but they would have to get out of the trailer to go through the gate. And there you see the Israeli soldier there checking the permits of the farmers as they go through to their land. And if the farmer forgot their permit for some reason, even though the Israeli authorities on their computer had all the information as to who is entitled to go through, if they had forgotten their permit, they wouldn't be allowed through. Now, this is one farmer, Jalal, that I spent some time with. I was on Palm Sunday evening, sitting down at his place to talk to him about the system. He employed 10 workers. He had greenhouses on the other side, the west side of the separation barrier. So he would have to go through there daily with his farm workers to work on what they were growing in the greenhouses and on other lands he had there. And he was telling me the stories about the experiences he had as a Palestinian farmer. And it's a story of political imbalance of power. It's pure power. The Israelis have the power, the Palestinians don't. So he told me stories of one case he went through. They were harvesting potatoes. He would go through with his workers, and they loaded 120 boxes of potatoes onto trailers attached to the tractor. They were right next to the gate when they loaded the boxes on the trailer. When he got to the gate, the soldiers said, "We're suspicious you put something underneath those boxes." Even though he was going home into Palestine, they alleged that he might have put a knife or something under the boxes. So he says, "We want you to unload all the boxes." So he called his workers over, and the soldiers said, "No, not your workers. We want you personally to unload all 120 boxes." Well, he's a strong man, but so he started to unload the boxes, and he got through maybe half of them, and the soldiers finally had their fun, and they said, "Okay, you can stop now. You can put the boxes back on the trailer." In the fall one year, he said that obviously a big crop is olives, olive trees. The olive harvest is in October, November. He had loaded olives in clear bags, big clear bags on the trailer. And a farmer came along, a soldier came along and simply took a knife and slashed all the bags. So all the olives went on the floor. Another occasion he told me that for a 6-week period, the soldiers wouldn't let Palestinian farmers through the Atil gate, which is the only gate that Jalal could go through with his workers, because that's where his permit was for. For 6 weeks, they wouldn't let anyone go through. And the pretext for doing that was that someone, they said, had stolen the key to the gate. And they assumed it was Palestinian. But as a form of collective punishment, which happens to Palestinians a lot, the soldiers for 6 weeks wouldn't let any farmers through to their lands. The problem when you have greenhouses and you're growing things, they just continue to grow. So he advised that in that 6-week period, he lost 120,000 shekels worth of produce from his greenhouses. Now trying to think what that is in dollars, but it's maybe $40,000 to $50,000 that he lost. But he said it wasn't the money that bothered him so much. It was just the constant humiliation, the constant practice of treating Palestinians as less than anyone else and treating them like that. And that's what bothered Jalal. These were the gates here that we went through up there. The big community south of Tulkrum, where we were based, which is up here, is Kakilia. And it's a rather unique community in that it's completely surrounded by this wall, almost completely surrounded. It's got one opening, one road for the 50 to 70,000 people living in Kakilia to get in and out of. And the green line is where the wall, according to the International Court of Justice, should be built, if it's going to be built. But here's where it actually is built, all around here. One effect of this wall being built like this is that there are Palestinians living in this area and Palestinians living in this area. The purplish, darkish colored spots are large Israeli settlements, illegal settlements where they've moved people illegal under international law. The community that our amnesty group had a file on was Jehus right there, and it lost 2/3 of its land, its agricultural land, when the wall was built there. So its farmers had to go through these gates to get to the land. And they also lost access to their water wells. They had 6 water wells prior to the wall being built. The wall, when built, included all their water on the Israel side. Finally, after they demonstrated for a long time, they got 1/3 of their land back and 1 of their water wells. In any event, so we spent, as ecumenical accompaniers, as our team, spent a lot of time in this area. Here's a community called Azun, where we went twice a week, and Isbat at Tabib is right there, and there's a community, Wadi Kana, is a parkland setting that I'll show you pictures about in this area. And all over here are the illegal settlements that Israel has built. So one day, I showed you the area where where Palestinians still lived on the other side of the wall. We had an opportunity, or I had an opportunity, to go with the Palestinian Medical Relief Society, because the Palestinians living in those areas had no access to medical care from the Israeli side. It had to come from the Palestinian side, so there was a team in Kikilia that went in there once every second week. One week they went to the north side of Kikilia. One week they went into this area, and the next week, the alternate week, they would go into this area, and this is where I went with them, into that area. And there was a school built in that community. It was subject to a demolition order. Israel had issued a demolition order for it because it was not built with a permit issued by Israel. Of course, Israel won't give permits for buildings to be built in those areas. This was the medical team, 2 of the doctors that went in to treat both students and the families that came to the school from the surrounding community for treatment while they were there. So that was one of the effects of the wall being built where it was.